Hi, I'm Kelly Thompson with Moti-Vitality. Arsenic is the 33rd most abundant element in the Earth's crust. This was the hot topic way before lead and PFAS and everything else when I was out in sales, 15, 20 years ago. And that's mostly because prior to 2003, actually it was 2000, the maximum contaminant level was 50 parts per billion. Now, the United States was the only industrialized country in the world that had an MCL over 10. And there were several studies done. President Clinton originally made the level 5 parts per billion. When President Bush came in office in 2000, they redid the study and eventually, realizing the results showed that arsenic needed to be dropped, that 50 was way too high, they dropped it down to 10. Now, the thing with President Bush, when he made the arsenic level 10, they did give 3 years to come into compliance, and that date was January 23rd, 2003. So it became official that municipalities had to be under the 10 part per billion level for arsenic starting in January of 2003. That was a big deal. There were, here in Michigan, it was interesting to see what happened. There were a lot of those out-of-the-garage companies, a lot of the smaller companies, and even some of the bigger ones that really used the media reports of arsenic. The only thing everybody knew about arsenic was arsenic and old lace and rat poison and that type of thing. It's how you killed people. It was the poison of choice in countless murder mystery books and movies and that type of thing. And so people were, I think, freaked out over the arsenic issue. When I was in sales, started testing for arsenic because people, some of our competitors were doing it, and it was a legitimate issue. People needed to know. We have some of the highest levels of naturally occurring arsenic in the country here. And arsenic, like I said, is the 33rd most abundant element in the Earth's crust, but it's also commonly found around lumber yards. They used to use arsenic in the treatment of lumber, and so you find it a lot around that. You find it around just different chemical facilities and that type of thing. So it's not only naturally occurring, but you do find it around industry, some industry as well. The one thing that I did not like back then was when some of the competitors, they'd use the skull and crossbones on their advertising, their literature, and then they just really took advantage of people's natural fear to market and promote the arsenic systems. It was interesting to see the technology and how it rose back then. Back then, really reverse osmosis was the only way to reduce or remove arsenic. And I'm not going to get into the chemical part of arsenic, but basically you've got arsenic 3 or trivalent arsenic and arsenic 5 pentavalent arsenic. A reverse osmosis system, a TFC membrane, thin film composite membrane, will generally remove between 40 to 60% of arsenic 3 and up to about 90 to 95% of arsenic 5. A lot of times the field test that you have, like the one that I'm going to demonstrate here in a moment, it just does a presence of arsenic. It does not determine the difference between arsenic 3 and arsenic 5, so it does a presence of. Back then, 15 years ago, when the issue really started coming out, it was before many of the reverse osmosis manufacturers had a cartridge that you could add on to the reverse osmosis system that would take the arsenic 3 out of the water as well as the arsenic 5. It was interesting to see what the manufacturers, the big manufacturers, did to sort of rush to make that happen. Now there are just so many treatment options for arsenic. It's still, for a lot of people, it's kind of scary still, but it has taken kind of a back burner to the lead issue. Of course, Flint, Michigan really brought the lead issue to prevalence, and now the PFAS seems to be out there. But arsenic is still an issue in many parts of the country, and it definitely, the MCL definitely needed to go down. I mean, the reason it took so long for them to drop it from the 50 level to the 10 level was simply the financial burden that it placed on the municipalities to bring that down. I mean, it cost a lot of money. But there are tons of treatment options now. It's pretty easy to treat, to take out of the water. In fact, in some cases, I think it's easier than some of the more traditional problems that we run into in the industry, like iron or calcium. Anyway, when we went in and tested for arsenic, because I believe so strongly in the Water Quality Association's Code of Ethics, and I believe very strongly in not using scare tactics. There was this balance that we had to have between educating people and letting them know whether or not they had arsenic in their water. So educating them, but not scaring them. You know, not going in, oh my God, I can't believe you're drinking that water with arsenic in it. You're making Kool-Aid for your kids with water that has arsenic in it. You know, we're not going to do any of that. So today I wanted to kind of go in and give you an idea of my approach on how I treated for arsenic. I'm going to do an arsenic test for it. The way I approached the arsenic test when I walked into a home is I would let the customer know, I want to test for arsenic. It is a common problem in this area. If this test, it's a visual test, it's a color test. So I'm going to look at it and it's going to be a pretty accurate indication of whether or not you have arsenic in your water. If you do have arsenic in your water, I strongly recommend that you go to an independent laboratory, somebody that does not have a vested interest in selling you something, which obviously I do, and verify those results. If this test comes back and says you don't have arsenic in the water, I feel pretty confident in telling you that you don't have arsenic in your water. But this is a good indicator. A lab test is going to be a lot more detailed and a lot more accurate than this field test. I have been very impressed with these tests. Generally, when I walked into the home, I would have that conversation with the customer. I would set that up, and then I would have my phone and I would set a timer for usually about 11 minutes, because the test, you need to read the results between 12 and 14 minutes on the arsenic test. Okay, so I would set my timer for 11 minutes, and then I would move down to the basement or to the utility room or where the water came in the home to do the plumbing assessment. For me, that worked really well because it forced me to keep my plumbing assessment to 10 minutes or less, or 11 minutes or less. And so setting that timer helped hold me accountable to keep me on track and make sure that I was being respectful of my customers' time as well. So I like that added benefit of it. So I'd set my timer for 11 minutes. When the timer went off, that meant I had a minute or two to come back upstairs and test the results for arsenic and see what they had. You know, when we were down in the basement doing that plumbing assessment, a lot of customers are very curious. They want to know what that result is. Now, when I came back up and I did test for those arsenic results, it's awesome because a lot of times there would not be arsenic in the water. And the customers are kind of expecting the sales guy to tell them that their water is horrible, right? Oh, you've got arsenic. They're expecting that. They're pessimistic automatically. Or at the very least, they expect a salesperson to, just come in and tell them how bad it's going to cost you tons of money, and tell them how bad it is. I liked it when my customers did not have arsenic in the water. I love that. It came up because it gave me credibility when I was talking about the rest of the stuff. It was that part was kind of nice. When they did have arsenic in the water, it was good to be able to address that. And because of the way I approached it, by recommending that they go to an independent lab to have it verified, I found that also added credibility to it as well. That I didn't sound like I was just that sales guy trying to sell them a bunch of expensive stuff they don't need. Okay, so this is the kit that I use. The new ones that are out, the most recent ones, it's a little black case, but it's still got the same stuff in it. It's actually a little smaller, a little easier to carry in. And then there's this one that has 5 tests in it, and I'm going to explain to you what I did with that here in just a few minutes. This was not available, at least to me, when I was in sales. I really love this, and I'll talk to you about that in a few. So I'm going to show you the kit. Now, most of your TDS meters, a lot of your TDS meters will also have a little temperature gauge on them as well. When you do this water test, do the arsenic test, it does not matter if the water is running through the softener or not. If the temperature of the water, which needs to be, they say between 24 and 30 degrees Celsius, which is 75 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit, in order to get an accurate reading on the water test. So it's okay, actually, if the water temperature is not where it needs to be, to add just a little bit of hot water to it. So you can open up the hot just to get it to that temperature range and where you need it to be. Because sometimes, obviously, coming out of a well, it's going to be a little colder than that. So a water softener is not going to take out the arsenic, though. It doesn't really matter whether it's raw water or coming through water treatment equipment. First thing you want to do, obviously, is rinse your bottles out thoroughly. I like to say at least 3 times. I think that's really important. And then you've got your bottles that are listed 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so the first thing you do, you take your pink scoop, you make a level drop that in. I usually use one of these lids. And the reason I do that is sometimes these guys, I don't know, you go to shake them up a little bit, sometimes they don't totally seal, and they will, and see I'm getting a little water there, so you want to do that. That could have been on the bottle itself, but so you shake that good. Then next you have your number 2, and on that one you use the red scoop. And you drop that in there. This is going to make the water turn a little bit yellow. Okay, looks like lemonade, yum. Okay, now that's supposed to set there for a minute or so. The third chemical reagent that you put in is going to turn it a really nasty gray looking, but it's going to create a gas that's going to react with the arsenic, and it's going to turn, if there's arsenic in the water, then it's going to turn this little test strip yellowish color. Okay, but you definitely don't want to get this wet. So when you put it in this dry lid here, you want to make sure, so you're going to notice I'm putting the red towards the back, okay? And the reason I'm doing that is because when I close that down, it's going to bend it down to where the pad is facing down so it can catch the gas. So I'm going to have that sitting there. Now I'm going to take my reagent number 3. Like I said, this is this gray stuff, looks like cement. Put that in there, and I need to shake that up really good, vigorously. Shake vigorously is what the instructions say. Okay, and now I'm going to put my lid on there. And now I set my timer on my phone or my watch or whatever I'm doing. I set my timer, and I can move, and that's when I can move into the plumbing assessment. One of the things that I do want to say is a little tip that I used when I was in sales, when I did sell an arsenic system, either a whole house arsenic system or reverse osmosis with an arsenic cartridge, or anytime I sold something to address arsenic, what I would often do is, these kits are, they're about $200. Now they come with 50 tests in them, but the tests do expire after a while. Back then we did not have these kits that have the 5 in it, but what I would do is, the price would be $200. When I sold an arsenic system, I would increase the price by that system of $200. And when I went out to do the in-person follow-up, I would take a kit with them. I would tell them that their arsenic system, whatever they did for whole house or reverse osmosis, that it came with an arsenic test kit so they could test it on their own. And I would take that kit out to them, and I would use their kit, their brand new arsenic test kit, to test for arsenic, to show them that the system that they had just invested in was taking out the arsenic. Now the thing that I loved about that is that they're going to be talking to people about that, right? They're going to be telling people when they're excited about it. They're going to be telling their family members, their brother-in-law is going to come to the house, and they're going to say, hey, you guys got that new arsenic system. I wonder if we have arsenic in our water. And hey, we've got a test kit that has 50 tests in it. Let me come over there and test it. So now my customer goes over and tests his brother-in-law's water, and next thing I know, I'm getting a call from the brother-in-law that says, hey, you sold a system to my brother-in-law, and he came and tested my water, and it looks like I might have a little arsenic in my water too. Will you come help me? Okay, so it allowed me to get referrals. $200 was a lot to add to that arsenic system. So the reason I love this has 5 tests. You can do the same thing. This is something I would include. This runs about $35, okay, and it has 5 tests in it. This becomes a lot more affordable option to take out to the customer when you go to do your follow-up, and to test this and give this to them, and it becomes residual income, because if they want to continually test and have that, they can purchase this from you as well. So I love this smaller option. I'm not going to open this box because it's sealed up, but this has 5 tests of this in it, and I think it's an excellent way to give peace of mind, to give that added credibility to the equipment that you're carrying, and to also to build your referral base with the customers where there's arsenic that's prevalent in the area. By the way, you can get all of these kits at Moti-Vitality.com, and Moti-Vitality members save 10% on them automatically by being a member. So please visit the Moti-Vitality marketplace and for more information on that, and to take a look. And if you have any questions, of course, you can always reach out and talk to us directly. So, okay, so we're going to come back here in just a couple minutes and show you what to do when this test result is completed. Oh, looks like it's about done. So we'll set our timer off. Hopefully we're done with our plumbing assessment at this time. And so let's take a look. We're going to open this up and pull it out. This is the moment of truth for customers. Okay, and remember, they're going to be a little nervous about this. So when you show them, you've got your tab here. It's just a color tab. And then you'll hold your tab underneath, just the holes, like this. And you'll match it up. And like I said, these tests are pretty accurate. I've always been very impressed with the accuracy of these tests. Now, if you have a positive reading, if it's yellow, always ask the customer, okay, what do you think? Where do you think you are on there? And if they say, oh, it's pretty clear, it's their story. If they are saying it's pretty clear and they can't see any yellow at all, then probably they're pretty good, okay? If there is yellow on there, let them make that determination of where it is. Because remember, if they have arsenic, you're going to recommend that they go to an independent lab and have those results verified anyway, right? Your credibility is gone if you kind of dictate, oh, it looks to me like you've got about 40, and then they come back and they've got 12. The lab says they have 12. Let them make that determination, okay? Let them tell you where they see that yellow in there. With these strips, you definitely want to have a separate baggie and keep those separate. Do not throw them in the customer's trash or garbage. I don't know, trash or garbage. Don't do either of those two things. You don't want dogs or kids, grabbing these and eating them. I've never heard of anything, any incident where it was where a dog or a cat or a kid got into it, but I always like to take all my trash with me anyway, even the other water tests. I don't like to throw that stuff away in there. So I always have a little baggie where even my foil packets for the iron test and those types of things, I like to have that separate. So if they do not have arsenic in the water, like I said, that adds credibility to you, and that gives you, now you have a lot more credibility when it comes to talking about some of the other things that you're talking about. When it comes to your chemicals, make sure when you dump this directly down the drain, into the drain, not around the sink. Sometimes the gray stuff that's in there will stain a little bit, stain that sink. So make sure that you You want to rinse you definitely want to rinse the bottles, because if they come out, you know, you don't want somebody else's water in your next water test. Okay, you do have 2 of them here as well, 2 bottles, but you definitely want to rinse that bottle out and put that back in and pack all your stuff up. Like I said, if you have any questions, please reach out to us, but definitely visit Moti-Vitality.com.